What if a TV show killed off two major characters, not because it had to, but because the writers wanted to completely destroy the comfort zone of the audience? That's exactly what happened with ABC's Will Trent, and fans are still arguing about whether it was genius or a complete disaster. Because in just a few episodes, the show ripped away the emotional foundation of the entire series. First, Amanda Wagner dies. Then, Dr. Seth McDale, played by Scott Foley, is suddenly killed off in the season 4 finale. And honestly, the real story behind that decision is way bigger than most people realize. This wasn't just shock value. This was a calculated television strategy. And once you see how it all connects, you'll never look at network procedurals the same way again. So let's break down exactly why Scott Foley left Will Trent, what the writers were really trying to do, and why Season 5 could either save the show or completely break it. The Season 4 finale, Be of Service, looked like a normal procedural episode at first. The GBI team was investigating a missing college student tied to a massive trafficking conspiracy involving fake police officers and powerful political figures. Classic high-stakes TV. But underneath the crime story, the real emotional bomb was Angie. After an entire season of stress, trauma, pregnancy scares, and hospital chaos, Angie finally goes into labor. And then, the writers pull one of the oldest tricks in television history: the car crash. Angie and Seth get T-boned on the way to the hospital. At first, viewers thought Angie or the baby might die, but the show uses that fear as misdirection. Because when they finally reach the hospital, Seth collapses from internal injuries and dies.
Not Angie, not the baby, Seth. And the moment that really hit fans, Will Trent showing up at the hospital with that devastated look on his face. The show intentionally makes you think the worst happened to Angie before revealing it was Seth all along. That twist completely changed the emotional direction of the series. And if you watched the finale live, you probably remember social media exploding immediately afterward. So here's the question. Did the writers make a bold, creative move? Or did they cross the line? Because fans are very divided on this one. Here's where things get interesting. The showrunners later admitted something huge. Seth's death was planned long before the finale. This wasn't random, it wasn't a scheduling emergency, and it definitely wasn't an accident creatively. The writers openly said they wanted a reset for Season 5. Translation? They believed the show had become too comfortable, too safe, too predictable. And Seth represented stability. That was the problem. See, Angie and Seth actually had something healthy, a real marriage, a family, a future. But the writers clearly believed that keeping Angie in a healthy relationship permanently blocked the emotional core of the show. Will and Angie's trauma bond. That's the center of everything. The entire series has been built around these two damaged people orbiting each other because of their shared childhood trauma. And Seth, he interrupted that cycle, so the writers removed him. Which raises another huge question. Did the show sacrifice its healthiest relationship just to force Will and Angie back together? Because a lot of fans think that's exactly what happened. If Seth's death wasn't controversial enough, the show immediately jumps forward 6 months. No funeral, no raw grief, no emotional breakdown. Just skip ahead. Suddenly, Will is helping Angie raise the baby, and the show moves forward like this surrogate family unit already exists. That decision made many viewers furious. Why? Because it made Seth's death feel less like a meaningful emotional story and more like a narrative shortcut, a quick way to reset the board. And honestly, this is where the audience backlash exploded. Fans started accusing the writers of trying to turn Will Trent into prestige drama television instead of the procedural people originally fell in love with. People compared it to shows like The White Lotus and even Game of Thrones because suddenly nobody felt safe anymore.
And that matters more than people think, because procedurals survive on audience trust. Most viewers expect danger, but they also expect stability. The characters are supposed to feel protected. Once a show breaks that unwritten rule, everything changes. And that's exactly what happened here. Now here's the part many casual viewers missed. Seth wasn't the first domino. Amanda Wagner died just weeks earlier. And honestly, that might have been the bigger shock. Amanda wasn't just Will's boss, she was basically his surrogate mother. She protected him, guided him, grounded him emotionally. And the show killed her off brutally during the Adelaide Trevin storyline. That death completely removed Will's safety net. Then, Seth's death removed Angie's. See the pattern? The writers systematically isolated both characters. They stripped away every stable relationship around them. Why? Because isolated characters create emotional dependency. Now, Will and Angie only really have each other. That's the entire reset. And whether fans like it or not, that appears to be the future of the show heading into season 5.
Now let's talk about the business side of this, because this is where television gets ruthless. As network shows age, they get expensive. Cast salaries increase, production costs rise, networks start making cuts. And here's the detail many TV fans noticed immediately. Scott Foley was never promoted to series regular status, even after becoming deeply connected to the story, even after marrying Angie, even after becoming central to the emotional narrative. He was still billed as a guest star. In television language, that's a warning sign. It usually means the character was never intended to stay forever. And when you combine that with Foley landing a brand new lead role on Amazon's It's Not Like That, the writing was basically on the wall. The timing lined up perfectly for both sides. The writers wanted their reset, and Foley was ready to lead his own streaming series, which leads to one of the strangest ironies of this entire story.
This part is honestly kind of wild. Scott Foley leaves Will Trent playing a husband whose sudden death leaves behind a grieving single parent, then immediately stars in a new show where he becomes the grieving widowed parent. That new series, It's Not Like That, follows a widowed father trying to rebuild his life after tragedy. Same emotional themes, different perspective. And according to Foley himself, the new show focuses much more deeply on grief and emotional recovery. Which is ironic, because many fans feel Will Trent skipped over those emotions entirely with that 6-month time jump. So in a strange way, Foley left one show that rushed through grief to star in another that explores it slowly and carefully. That's a fascinating career move. That's the question everything comes back to. Because from a storytelling perspective, the writers achieved exactly what they wanted. Nobody feels safe anymore. The show feels unpredictable, the emotional stakes are higher than ever, but there's also a risk. If season 5 simply pushes Will and Angie back into the same toxic cycle fans already watched for years, then Seth's death could end up feeling pointless, and viewers won't forgive that easily, especially after losing Amanda too. The writers now have one job: prove these deaths actually mattered. Because if they don't deliver real emotional growth, then season 4 won't be remembered as a bold reinvention. It'll be remembered as the moment Will Trent broke its audience's trust. And honestly, season 5 might determine the future of the entire series. So now I want to hear from you. Did the writers make a brilliant move by raising the stakes, or did they completely ruin the emotional core of the show? And do you actually want Will and Angie back together? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this debate is getting intense. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and stick around for more deep dives into the biggest TV controversies, behind-the-scenes industry decisions, and shocking character exits. Because television is changing fast, and the drama behind the camera is sometimes even crazier than what happens on screen.